Beyond the Cloud is the insane Mack Rides launched coaster at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. Standing at over 200 feet and reaching speeds of over 80 miles per hour, this is a true beast of a ride. Indeed, it is Mack Rides' tallest and fastest launched coaster, at least until that spinning coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure opens, hopefully next year. This is also one of the most intense coasters I've ever ridden. I will explain why in this review. In the year 2009, Mack Rides built Blue Fire at Europa Park. It was the first thrill coaster they had ever built, and it showed the world that Mack meant business. Since then, they have been on an upward trajectory, opening some great coasters ranging from launched coasters to hypercoasters. But they hadn't opened a hyper-launched coaster until 2022, which was when Beyond the Cloud opened at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. But the park didn't always occupy the space it does today. In 1997, Suzhou Amusement Land opened, and in the 2000s, they began building roller coasters such as the Vekoma SLC and SBL knockoff shuttle loop. But in the year 2017, Suzhou Amusement Land closed permanently after 2 decades of operation. Even though the park was gone, the name remained, and Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World opened in 2020 in a different location. It had 2 roller coasters, a Jinma tilt coaster and spinning coaster. And 2 years later, the subject of today's video would be built. Being of hyper heights, Beyond the Cloud is a very imposing ride. Located at the edge of the park, it is highly visible from the outside. Once you have entered the park, you make a right turn and walk a short distance before the enormous structure becomes visible. It is huge and completely dwarfs everything around it. I have visited the park twice, and on my first trip in 2024, Beyond the Cloud was closed. You can probably imagine how disappointed I was to have missed the ride. In fact, it was a major reason I decided to make another trip there in 2025. Thankfully, I called the park the day I planned to go and was able to confirm that Beyond the Cloud would indeed be running. And when I arrived, the closed sign that had haunted me for the past year was nowhere in sight. Instead, I was greeted with a simple, rather minimalist arched entrance. In fact, the ride as a whole doesn't have that much theming at all, but that's okay since the layout is very strong on its own. Although I was unable to get on Beyond the Cloud on my first visit in the summer, other rides had lengthy waits and I'd imagine it would be the same for Beyond the Cloud. Meanwhile, on my recent winter visit, the park was very quiet and Beyond the Cloud was of course a complete walk-on. As a result, they were only running 1 train. That train has 5 cars each with 2 rows of 2 for a capacity of 20 riders. You might notice the second row of each car is elevated ever so slightly higher than the first. This actually does make a difference on one element in particular. The restraints on this ride consist of a seatbelt and overhead lap bar. These are really comfortable and freeing, allowing you to fully feel this ride's powerful airtime and laterals. Due to how few people were queuing, they were waiting several minutes between each cycle, and early in the morning when maybe 2 or 3 people were there at a time, only the front car's restraints were open. Although, if you do find yourself in this situation, you can ask to ride in a different car and they will be happy to accommodate that request. I prefer the back on Beyond the Cloud for the whip on some of the drops, so this was certainly a relief. The ride begins with a launch straight out of the station. Coaster enthusiasts often like to make fun of Mack Rides for how weak their launches are, and initially, Beyond the Cloud seems to suffer from the same issue. However, once the train clears a station platform, the acceleration suddenly becomes much more powerful. The front also gets a strong sense of speed as you are traveling at 80 miles per hour, as well as being pinned to the back of your seat. As soon as you leave the launch track, there is a pothole as you begin ascending the first element. It isn't nearly rough enough to bother me, and the rest of the ride is perfectly smooth, but it was a bit surprising on such a new coaster. That leads into the top hat. In front, you get great ejector airtime as you crest the top, followed by floater airtime on the drop. The back has nice flowjector airtime over the top, which gradually weakens before transitioning into powerful sustained ejector airtime on the descent. The following pullout is quite drawn out and does not have very strong positive Gs as a result, but you do regain all that speed again as you reach ground level. At this point, you are thrown into a barrel roll. This is most likely the fastest inversion on the planet. Although no speed has been released, it is likely faster than Max Force's barrel roll, as that coaster has a slower launch and more track prior to its inversion, meaning more speed gets lost. Back to Beyond the Cloud, that inversion is actually a bit disappointing. I was optimistic it could be better than the Blue Fire Roll, but that is not the case. Remember when I said that the second row of each car is elevated slightly over the front? Well, on the elevated rows, you will get some upside down airtime and laterals, while the lower seats are tamer because your heartline is lower to the track. It may be no Blue Fire Roll, but it is still a good inversion. That is followed by an Immelman. The entry gives good positive Gs, but you twist earlier out of the inversion than usual. This means there is a big straight drop on the other side of the element. In front, you will get nice floater airtime here. Meanwhile, the back will get strong and sustained ejector airtime as they are yanked down at speed. This is followed by a sharp airtime hill. It offers another very powerful ejector airtime burst for everyone. Up until this point, the pacing on Beyond the Cloud has been impeccable, but from here, it lets its foot off the gas a little. Next, you rise up into a Cobra Roll. An interesting feature of this is that it flares out on both sides to wrap around the top hat. It is an awesome visual, but the forces are quite mild. Though if the ride is running slowly, like getting a Zen ride on the first train of the morning on a cold winter day slow, both ends of the Cobra Roll will actually give some hang time. That leads into a vertical loop. This actually threads the middle of the Cobra Roll, creating a wonderful tangled mess of track. Like the Cobra Roll, if the ride is running really slowly, you may get some hang time. The entry and exit of the loop also have some good positive Gs. Now the ride briefly returns to form. You go into a double up which has two insanely sharp bursts of ejector airtime back to back. Finally, you hit the brakes, bringing this 1,040 meter or 3,412 foot long coaster to a close. Beyond the Cloud is a short but sweet ride. The first half is relentless with some insane airtime moments and fast-paced inversions. And even though the final three inversions are a bit tamer, they still create a satisfying visual of the track threading through itself multiple times. The ride is also quite comfortable, as apart from that jolt at the beginning that isn't even that bad, it is perfectly smooth, and the restraints are also very nice and ergonomic. So what would I rate Beyond the Cloud? I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Though I was devastated to see it closed on my first visit, it was certainly worth making another trip for. Even though I have not been on any other Mack thrill rides apart from a Blue Fire clone, I am quite sure it is one of their best coasters. It thrashes you around with some very powerful airtime moments as well as a few inversions in very quick succession, making it one of the most intense launched coasters I have ever ridden. So what do you think of Beyond the Cloud? Have you ridden it? Do you really enjoy the intensity of the elements? Or is it high on your bucket list? I would love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this coaster review, and I would be very grateful if you gave it a like and subscribed, as more videos will be coming soon on the channel. Thanks for watching.